Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LGBT Alliance USA Weekly News Roundup. We are here with Carol, Joss, and me, Ariane. We have some news updates to share on the captured NGO front, but we'll discuss that at the end. Meanwhile, we also have stories about the Detransitioner Bill of Rights in Arizona, the intimidation of a Texas whistleblower, some medical news about the effects of testosterone, some updates about what's going on in the California legislature, and also what's going on with Pride at Target. So for now, I'll pass it off to you, Joss.
Thanks, Ariane. So we're going to start off with the Arizona Detrans Bill of Rights. So this was sponsored by Senator Janae Shamp, a Republican, and all of the sponsors are Republican on this bill. This is SB 1511, and it grants equality of care and coverage for overlooked, underserved people. Obviously, we know detransitioners, when they start the detransition process, are often ghosted by the doctors and the medical establishment. Meanwhile, when people are seeking transition, they have the backing of powerful institutions and whole lobby groups. So the goal here is to offer detransitioners the same access to medical services that they would be getting with transition. So this is not a bill that undoes any level of medical access for transitioning people. It just provides equality of access for people who are detransitioning. And this is a unique bill in this country. I think this is the first country that, or the first state that has had such a bill come up. The bill has passed the House. At this point, it's gone back to the Senate for another vote, and that's where it is right now. So if you're in Arizona, my recommendation would be to call your state senators and support SB 1511, and let's get some adequate and equal care for detransitioners as they need medical services. The other article that I want to talk about today and issue is the prosecution of Eithan Haim, Texas surgeon who is a whistleblower. And he found that the Texas Children's Hospital had continued running its transgender program despite announcing that the program had been discontinued in accordance with Greg Abbott's 2022 directive. The Houston-based hospital was ultimately forced to stop its trans medical practices after the state law took effect in September 2023, prohibiting drug and surgical gender-affirming interventions for minors. What Dr. Haim found was U.S. Marshals on his doorstep notifying him that he violated HIPAA rules on 4 counts. And so he's set to appear in court on June 17th. In January, Haim publicly identified himself as the whistleblower in an effort to protect himself from retaliation by the DOJ and the Department of Health and Human Services. Nevertheless, they have come for him. And the prosecutor in this case claims that he failed to redact sensitive patient information. After understanding how far this corruption went, he says, I had no other option but to take the story public and fight back. If I don't do this now, I'm going to pass this conflict on to my children. That's something I will not tolerate. There was this deep, visceral part of me that knew exactly what was happening, that they were there because we had challenged the political ideology and they were there to make an example out of me, describing the moment when federal agents showed up at his door. The journalists confirmed that there was no personally identifiable information in the documents that were shared. It was just the fact that proof that these medical interventions were still being performed, even though they were saying that they were no longer performing them. The Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, Tina Ansari, is leading this criminal investigation. She said he had no right to share the medical records of minor patients with the public. However, she neglected to mention that the documents disclosed were not patient charts, were redacted to protect sensitive patient information, and complied with HIPAA, which permits anonymized information to be disclosed generally, and even protected information can be published if it's used to stop egregious medical misconduct. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with this. we'll know more after June 17th. And let's pass it over to Carol for her stories.
Thanks, Joss. All right, so first up is Target. So Target announced that it would be cutting back on its Pride merchandise this year due to backlash. Some viral videos went around last year. I'm probably some of you saw them. I know I saw them, of people in Target throwing a fit over the Pride section, the LGBTQ stuff in the store. And I have to admit, from what I saw at my store, it was a bit much. Most of the videos I saw, though, were coming from a homophobic stance. So I have to disagree with that take. But from my experience in the store, they were selling binders in the section. And I was very upset about it. So I'm actually glad to see this cut back. Target's statement that they released said that merchandise will be available next month in select stores based on historical sales performance. So I would say what that means to me is the stores in the more conservative red areas are going to have their sections reduced, and the stores in the liberal blue areas are going to be as colorful as ever. New study out of Brazil from a university found that trans-identified women on testosterone showed significant postmenopausal problems. 68 trans-identified women who were taking cross-sex hormones were studied. 95% had developed pelvic floor dysfunction. The researchers stated that they saw symptoms in these women, ages 18 to 28, that they would only expect to see in postmenopausal women, such as bladder and bowel problems. I have to say, from my own experience, this is not a surprise. Many detrans women have talked about this, and I knew many trans-identified women who had these problems, and they were all very young. So let's bring it into California. California has a slew of bills going on right now that they are trying to get through regarding gender stuff, but this one in particular is a little mind-boggling. So California legislators are trying to push through Assembly Bill number 2442. Basically, what this bill does, I'll just read the little piece here that will give you all the information you need. It's going to expedite the licensure process for an applicant who demonstrates that they intend to provide gender-affirming healthcare and gender-affirming mental health care services. So basically, they're saying doctors who are going to perform gender-affirming care are going to get their license faster than doctors who won't. The bill was introduced by Assembly member, well, I'm not sure how to say that, spelled ZBUR. And I expect it's probably gonna pass because most California stuff's passed. But yeah, that's my part of the news. Ariane?
Thank you, Carol. So I'm just going to share some news on the NGO front. First, we turn to the LGBTQ group Lambda Legal, which recently announced that they are nearly doubling their litigation docket to $180 million. That is $180 million. They are calling this effort the quote-unquote unstoppable future strategy, and they claim that this is the largest campaign in the history of the so-called equality movement. Lambda claims that it has already secured $147 million in commitments towards its $180 million goal. Part of their budget is boosted by a $25 million donation from the Catherine G. Graham Trust. Catherine G. Graham being a psychotherapist and early Lambda Legal board member who died in 2020. They also received a $16 million gift, that is $16 million gift from Mackenzie Scott, who's the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. And Scott, by the way, is also a big donor to Planned Parenthood, which is now a major provider of hormones for trans-identifying people. Lambda Legal Board Chair Michelle Riley lists marriage equality, transgender rights, employment protections, healthcare equity, parental rights, safety at school, and so much more as being at stake. I think it's hard to avoid the conclusion that they are most worried about state attempts to restrict trans-identifying kids' access to hormones and surgeries, as well as attempts to clamp down on gender and sexuality-related content in schools, because, quite frankly, that's where so much of the state legislative effort is headed towards. we now turn to a group that, while not specifically LGBTQ, is nonetheless on board with the LGBTQ alphabet soup movement, namely the Southern Poverty Law Center. On May 31st, the Southern Poverty Law Center released a list of so-called anti-LGBTQ hate groups. And this list included many predictable figures on the religious right, but also included Gays Against Groomers, Do No Harm, GenSpect, and the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, which are all organizations committed to challenging gender ideology and its infiltration of the medical field. So by lumping all of these organizations together with the religious right, the Southern Poverty Law Center is clearly trying to silence dissent of transgender activism in progressive circles, and I find that very disconcerting, although pretty predictable. It's part of their strategy. And finally, GLAAD, our beloved favorite organization, GLAAD. They have recently advertised a No TERFs t-shirt and tote bag. They put this all over social media. They singled out this item, this No TERFs t-shirt from their store on social media. I don't know. I personally am a little bit optimistic about that. And insofar as I think this is a sign that they're really getting threatened, and they finally are finally realizing that they're now getting some serious TERFy dissent, especially during Pride Month. So I'm curious to hear what you two have to say about that.
I hate the shirt, obviously, but I wonder, like, there needs to be, I wish I could buy it. I wouldn't give them money. I wish I could have it ironically, although I don't want to have it ironically, but maybe there's something we can do there, like, turn it around a little bit.
In terms of turning it around, like talking about this on Instagram, the famous artist Birdie Rose posted her shirt that's like infamous TERF or something like this. Like, so there are some rad femmes and women out there that are trying to turn it on its head and like claiming that like it's not a cudgel anymore to beat over our heads to call us TERFs. It's just really disappointing for a former gay rights organization to single out, in particular, lesbian and bisexual women, but all gender critical LGBT people using that.
Like in the comments, I did leave a comment where I was like, what's a TERF? I mean, because if you don't define it. Okay, so what's the definition? Well, from what we know, the definition is usually a woman, lesbian, who says trans women are not women. That's a TERF. So that's telling lesbians that they're saying no lesbians, go away.
Yeah, no bi women, and there's a lot of gay men now that are like, yeah, call me a TERF. Somebody in our comments on Instagram said term. I guess it's trans exclusionary radical males. I don't know. that gave me a chuckle, but yeah, it's just it's disrespectful. Like, they need to stop calling themselves an LGBTQ NGO and just say what they are at this point. They're just trans activists. It's a TQ organization.
Also, it's really not progressive to just sling names and personal attacks and not allow for dissent. So they are not a progressive organization.
Somebody in the comments also on Twitter, on X, had mentioned like it's a very ugly, like it's bland. It's just like there's no effort into the design. It's just no TERFs. Like, okay,
great.
Yeah, there's a whole argument to be made about the over commercialization of printed garments and the amount of waste and like excess. But yeah, that's a story for a different day. It's an uninspired t-shirt. It's disrespectful and derogatory to any and it quells dissent, just like their goal there is to quell dissent.
But at this point, so much of Pride Month is simply grifting. I mean, it's making money. It's trying to, like there was also on our Instagram, posts about how much money they're charging these days for Pride related events. They're charging hundreds of dollars. I mean, if any excuse to make money is, you know, they'll capitalize it, these groups will, and especially given like I found it, just going back to the Lambda Legal thing, incredible that they're now saying this was apparently the biggest fundraising, the biggest financial push towards quote unquote equality. It's just insane how much money there is in this whole industry.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you're right though, Ariane, in that saying that the fact that they are putting this dumb shirt out, the fact that these organizations are pushing so much money at this point means that they see the dissent. They see that the tide might be turning, and they're really trying to do everything they can to stop it. So it is a positive in a way, you know. The only thing I'm disappointed about is I wanted us to be on that list. We're not on that list yet.
I'll probably be put on that list eventually.
Yes, we should have a party once we're put on that list.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed in the HRC Pride Gear is they have a hat that's like "Love is Love" on the back, and on the front it's embroidered a rainbow, but the rainbow is not even a rainbow. Like it doesn't even make sense anymore. It's like red, orange, yellow, brown, a weird blue, black, purple. Like what is it? They're not even proofing the merch at this point. They're just like, it's got rainbowish stuff happening, print it, get it out there. Like it's $30, $50, let's go. Like mugs, hats, everything you could want. The grift is real.
And on that note, happy Pride Month, everyone.
Happy Pride.
Thank you for joining us for our weekly news roundup, and we hope to see you again next week. Take care.